Ymir's death did not end her influence. It only changed its form. The power she left behind would flow through bloodlines, kingdoms, and centuries, until it reached a man who would inherit not her strength, but her curse. 2,000 years later, the man who saw the truth, Grisha Yeager. The border wall of Paradis Island stretched endlessly across the horizon, a monument to judgment and exile. Along its edge, Marleyan officers stood in formation, their rifles gleaming in the morning light. Below them, chained and blindfolded, a group of Eldians knelt in the sand. One among them was a man of 32 years, his body scarred from days of torture, his spirit fractured by the weight of what he had lost. Grisha Yeager had led a revolutionary movement, married into royal blood, and fathered a son who had betrayed him. Now he waited for transformation into a mindless titan, the cruelest punishment Marley could devise. But the man beside him wore a different expression. Sergeant Gross prepared to throw Grisha from the wall, eager to watch another Eldian fall to the creatures below. Then everything changed. Eren Kruger, the officer Grisha recognized from his childhood, pushed Gross instead. As the sergeant tumbled toward the waiting titan, Kruger revealed himself as the Owl, the mysterious benefactor who had guided the Restorationists from within Marley's military. In moments, Kruger would transfer the attack titan to Grisha and send him toward a mission that would reshape the world inside the walls. This was not an ending, it was a threshold. The world of attack on Titan operates according to rigid systems of power and oppression. At its center lies the ability to transform into Titans, a curse and gift passed down from Dina Fritz 2,000 years before. 9 special Titans possess distinct abilities and intelligence, while pure Titans are mindless creatures created by injecting Eldian subjects with spinal fluid harvested from Titans. The founding Titan holds supreme authority, capable of controlling all other Titans and altering the memories and bodies of every subject of Ymir. Marley, a nation that once suffered under Eldian rule, seized 7 of the 9 Titans during the Great Titan War and used them to dominate the modern world. Approximately 100 years before the main timeline, the 145th king of Eldia, Carla Fritz, retreated to Paradis Island with the founding Titan and a population of his people. He erected 3 massive walls using countless colossal Titans and wiped the memories of those within, creating an isolated society that believed humanity had been extinct outside their barriers. The king changed his family name to Reiss to rule in secret, leaving a false monarchy to govern publicly. Those who did not flee to the island were forced into internment zones throughout Marley's territory, living as second-class citizens marked by armbands and subjected to constant surveillance. This segregation defined every aspect of their existence, from where they could walk to whom they could marry. The penalty for transgression was exile to paradise and transformation into a pure Titan, condemned to wander the island devouring any humans they encountered. This system of punishment served multiple purposes. It eliminated dissenters. It weaponized Eldians against their own people trapped within the walls, and it reminded those in the internment zones of their precarious position. Into this world, Grisha Yeager was born in the year 806, in the Liberio internment zone within the nation of Marley. Grisha's childhood in Liberio was defined by invisible chains. His father operated a medical clinic, treating Eldian patients who had limited access to Marleyan healthcare. His mother managed their household within the confines of their restricted district. In 809, Grisha's younger sister Faye was born, a girl with a wonder for the world that their circumstances could not fully suppress. The Yeager family wore their armbands in public, kept their voices low, and obeyed the regulations that governed their every movement. Grisha's father taught him the official history, that Eldians were descendants of Dina Fritz, whose powers had been used for centuries of atrocity against other peoples, and that their current subjugation was righteous consequence. But Grisha possessed a temperament ill-suited to acceptance. He questioned the logic that children should pay for crimes committed generations before they were born. He saw the fear in his parents' eyes when Marleyan soldiers passed by, and he resented it. This resentment would drive every decision that followed. In 817, when Grisha was 11 and Faye was 8, they witnessed an airship passing over Liberio. The sight captivated them both. Despite their mother's warnings, Grisha convinced Faye to leave the internment zone without permission to watch the aircraft land. They ran through streets where Marleyans spat at them and called them Devil's Blood, where every corner held potential danger. When they reached a hillside overlooking the airship hangar, 2 public security officers discovered them. Sergeant Gross and his colleague Eren Kruger stood smoking cigarettes when the children stumbled into view. The punishment came swiftly. Kruger beat Grisha while Gross took Faye away, claiming he would escort her home. Grisha took the full burden, insisting his sister had been brought against her will, hoping to spare his family worse consequences. But when Grisha returned home hours later, beaten and bloodied, Faye was not there. Her body was found the next day by the river, mangled beyond recognition. Gross and Kruger came to the Yeager residence with a fabricated story. They had left Faye at the border of the internment zone and returned to their duties, and she must have wandered back out alone. The officers blamed the children for breaking the rules. Grisha's mother wept. His father smiled at the men and promised to educate his son more thoroughly about Eldian history and their place in society. That night, Mr. Yeager recounted the official narrative of Eldian crimes, the 1,700 years of oppression, the atrocities committed under the Eldian Empire. Grisha called them liars. He said Faye had been murdered. His father silenced him, explaining that without power they had no choice but to live quietly and modestly, that speaking out would only bring the same fate to the rest of the family. Grisha agreed to his father's terms, but something inside him had broken beyond repair. The boy who had wanted to see an airship was gone. In his place stood someone who would spend his life trying to correct what he saw as an unjust world, regardless of the cost. 7 years passed before Grisha discovered the truth. He followed his father into medicine, training to run the clinic, treating patients from the internment zone. In 824, a man named Reiss came to him as a patient. During the examination, Reiss revealed that he knew how Faye had truly died. Gross had taken her to a remote location and released his dogs on her, using her death as a lesson to teach his sons about Eldian subhumanity. This knowledge was provided by the Owl, a mysterious figure within Marley's government who was gathering Eldians willing to fight for restoration. Reiss invited Grisha to join them. The revelation shattered any remaining restraint. Grisha joined the Eldian Restorationists, a radical organization operating under the cover of a social club. They met in basements and back rooms, protected by the Owl's intelligence about public securities movements. The Owl provided them with weapons, funding, and most critically, historical documents that contradicted the official Marleyan narrative. These ancient texts, written in archaic language and accompanied by illustrations, suggested that Dina Fritz had used the power of titans to build roads, cultivate land, and bring prosperity to humanity. The Restorationists interpreted this as evidence that the Eldian Empire had been beneficial, that Marleyan propaganda was entirely fabricated to justify oppression. They convinced themselves that every accusation was a lie, that Eldians were chosen children of God whose rightful place was to rule. This ideology was as extreme as the system it opposed, replacing one form of supremacy with another. But for young men and women who had spent their lives being called devils, who had watched family members disappeared or beaten, the narrative offered purpose and dignity. Grisha became one of the movement's leaders, using his medical work as cover for revolutionary activity. During this period, the Owl sent the Restorationists a crucial asset, Dina Fritz. She was the last surviving member of the royal family's continental branch, descendants of those who had refused to flee to Paradise with King Fritz. Her bloodline had survived in hiding for generations, waiting for an opportunity to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Dina brought information that transformed the Restorationists' understanding of their situation. She explained that King Fritz had taken the founding titan to Paradis Island, and that this founding titan was the key to controlling all other titans and achieving Eldian restoration. She revealed that the king's retreat had been an act of cowardice and betrayal, abandoning continental Eldians to suffer under Marleyan rule. The Restorationists were emboldened. If they could somehow obtain the founding titan, they could command the other Titans, defeat Marley, and rebuild the Eldian Empire. Grisha and Dina grew close through their shared conviction. In 825, they married. Their union represented more than personal affection. It symbolized the alliance between the Restorationist leadership and the royal bloodline necessary to wield the founding Titan's full power. Later that year, Dina gave birth to their son, naming him Zeke. The boy represented the future they were fighting to create, a generation that would grow up free from the internment zones. But the arrival of a child complicated their mission. The Marleyan government announced the warrior program, seeking Eldian children between the ages of 5 and 7 to inherit 7 of the 9 Titans. The warriors would serve Marley's military interests, gaining honorary Marleyan status for their families. The owl sent word that Marley's true goal was to capture Paradis Island's natural resources and seize the founding Titan before King Fritz could use it against them. The king had threatened that any attack on Paradise would release tens of millions of Titans from within the walls to flatten the earth. But the owl revealed this was an empty threat. King Fritz had made a vow renouncing war, binding all royal-blooded inheritors of the founding Titan to pacifism. He would never use the Titan power to retaliate. Marley understood this, which was why they felt emboldened to invade. The Restorationists realized they needed to act before Marley succeeded. Grisha made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He would enroll Zeke in the warrior program to serve as their spy. A royal-blooded child with access to Marley's Titan powers could be the weapon that finally turned the tide. Grisha and Dina began training Zeke for the program, drilling him on Restorationist ideology, teaching him to hide his true loyalties while performing well enough to be selected as a warrior candidate. The plan destroyed their family. Zeke was 7 years old, sent to military training where instructors berated him and fellow candidates mocked his poor performance. He struggled with the physical demands and combat exercises, falling behind his peers. Each failure was reported back to his parents, who responded with increased pressure. Grisha grew frustrated and harsh, demanding better results, telling Zeke that his performance was insufficient for their needs. Most nights, Grisha and Dina attended Restorationist meetings, leaving Zeke with his grandparents. The boy listened to his grandfather recount stories of Eldian atrocities, internalizing a version of history that contradicted everything his parents taught him. At the warrior training facility, Zeke found only one source of genuine care, Tom K-Saver, a researcher who held the Beast Titan. K-Saver was more interested in studying Titans than fighting, and he saw in Zeke a kindred spirit unsuited for military service. They played catch together, an island of normalcy in Zeke's increasingly unbearable life. K-Saver listened without judgment. When Zeke tried to share his accomplishments with his parents, they were too distracted by Restorationist business to pay attention. When he complained about the difficulty of training, they told him it was necessary for the greater good. Grisha's own experiences had left him unable to see that he was repeating his father's mistakes, imposing an ideology on his child without considering the cost. The breaking point came when Zeke overheard public security officers discussing how close they were to identifying the Restorationist leaders. He ran home and begged his parents to stop, warning them that discovery meant death for the entire family. Grisha and Dina insisted that their work was too important to abandon. Zeke tried appealing to his father by mentioning Faye, asking if Grisha would accept his own son meeting the same fate. The question enraged Grisha. He shouted that the only reason Faye was dead was because of how cruel and twisted the world was, and that fixing that world required sacrifice. Zeke, 7 years old and trapped between two impossible choices, turned to the one person who had shown him unconditional kindness. Saver suggested that Zeke report his parents to the authorities. This would prove Zeke's loyalty to Marley, protecting him and his grandparents from punishment. It would also end the pressure his parents had placed on him. K-Saver framed it as the only option available. Zeke, desperate and afraid, agreed. He went to the Marleyan authorities with information about the Eldian Restorationists, identifying Grisha and Dina as leaders of the movement. The betrayal was complete. In 832, public security raided the Restorationist meeting. Grisha, Dina, and their associates were arrested, tortured for information about the owl's identity, and sentenced to exile on Paradis Island. Grisha's parents watched as soldiers took their son and daughter-in-law away. Zeke stood beside them, accompanied by Yeager, maintaining the pretense of loyalty to Marley that had saved his life. On the transport to Paradise, the Restorationists were bound and blindfolded, subjected to further interrogation. None of them knew the owl's true identity, so they could reveal nothing under torture. Grisha's fingers were crushed, his body beaten, his spirit broken by the knowledge that his son had turned them in. He had lost Faye to Marleyan violence, lost Zeke to his own short-sightedness, and lost Dina to the punishment he had brought upon them all. The purpose that had sustained him for 8 years now seemed hollow. They arrived at Paradis Island's wall, where Marleyan officers prepared to inject them with Titan serum and throw them over the edge. One by one, the Restorationists were transformed, their human bodies contorting into massive, mindless forms that shambled off into the wasteland. Reiss was kicked from the wall to serve as bait, drawing the newly created Titans away from the border. Dina was brought forward next. She spoke to Grisha one final time, telling him not to worry, that no matter what form she took, she would find him again. Then Gross injected her with the serum and pushed her over the wall. Grisha watched his wife transform into a Titan and wander away, disappearing into the distance. Gross taunted him, suggesting that Dina was more interested in following Reiss than staying with her husband. Only Grisha remained. Gross prepared to throw him to the Titans below, wanting to see him scream and suffer. At that moment, Eren Kruger stepped forward and pushed Gross instead. The sergeant tumbled from the wall, falling into the waiting jaws of a Titan. Kruger cut Grisha's blindfold and restraints, then mutilated his own hand. Grisha recognized him, the officer who had stood beside Gross when Faye was taken, the man who had beaten him on that day in 817. Kruger explained that he was the Owl. He had infiltrated Marley's public security decades earlier, with the help of an Eldian doctor who had falsified his blood tests. His father had died fighting for Eldian restoration, burned alive by Marleyan soldiers. Kruger had spent his entire adult life undercover, turning thousands of Eldians into Titans to maintain his cover, enduring unimaginable moral horror to protect his position. He had founded the Restorationists, provided them with resources and information, and guided them toward a goal they did not fully understand. Now, at the end of his 13-year limit as a Titan shifter, he was ready to pass on his burden. Kruger transformed into the Attack Titan, a muscular form with sunken eyes and pronounced features. He destroyed the Marleyan steamboat and slaughtered every remaining officer, then returned to the wall in human form. Sitting beside Grisha, he revealed his true purpose. The Attack Titan possessed a unique ability. Its inheritors could see memories from future holders of the power. Kruger had received fragmented visions that showed him what needed to happen. He had chosen Grisha to carry on the mission specifically because of the hatred he had seen in the young boy's eyes when Faye died. That hatred, properly directed, could accomplish what careful planning could not. Kruger explained the geopolitical reality that the Restorationists had only partially understood. The founding Titans' threat to release the Wall Titans was indeed empty, as Grisha's group had discovered, but not for the reasons they assumed. King Fritz had made a vow renouncing war that bound every royal-blooded inheritor of the founding Titan to pacifism. Even if a Restorationist succeeded in capturing the founding Titan, a royal-blooded person could not use it to attack Marley without violating this binding oath. The king desired Eldia's eventual destruction as penance for past sins. He had created the walls as a final refuge where Eldians could live in peace until the outside world inevitably destroyed them. This revelation destroyed Grisha's remaining conviction. Everything he had sacrificed, everyone he had lost, had been in service of an impossible goal. Kruger did not allow him to wallow in despair. He presented an alternative path. Someone without royal blood could wield the founding Titan's power to some degree, though they could not access its full abilities. If that person also possessed another Titan power, particularly the Attack Titan with its unique connection to future memories, they might find a way to break the system entirely. Grisha needed to enter the walls, locate the Reiss family who had inherited the founding Titan, take it by force, and pass both powers to someone capable of using them. Kruger held up a photograph, Dina and young Zeke, preserved from the raid on Grisha's home. He used it to reignite Grisha's will, reminding him that Faye deserved to be avenged, that the Restorationists who had just been transformed deserved their sacrifice to mean something. Grisha initially refused. He said he would never have joined the cause if he had known the true cost. He was exhausted, traumatized, broken by loss. Kruger told him to start a family within the walls, to find someone to love, to build a life that would give him strength to complete the mission when the time came. Then Kruger bit his hand open and prepared to transfer the attack Titan. Before the transformation, he spoke strange words. He told Grisha to protect Mikasa and Armin, names that meant nothing to either of them. The attack Titan's ability to transcend time was manifesting, pulling memories from a future Grisha could not comprehend. Then Kruger transformed one final time, and Grisha, newly converted into a pure Titan through Kruger's serum, devoured him. The power transferred. Grisha inherited the attack Titan along with fragments of memory from every previous holder. He stood on the wall of Paradis Island, a survivor of exile, a widower, a father to a son who had betrayed him, a doctor trained in advanced Marleyan medicine, a revolutionary whose movement had been destroyed, and now a Titan shifter carrying a mission he barely understood. Behind him was Marley, where his parents and son still lived in the internment zone. Before him lay the walls, an isolated society that did not know the truth of the world outside, ruled by a royal family that possessed the key to everything, but lacked the will to use it. He climbed down from the wall and walked into the unknown. Keith Shadis, second in command of the Survey Corps, discovered Grisha wandering outside Wall Maria near Shiganshina District. Finding a person beyond the walls was extraordinary. Finding one who claimed to remember nothing was unprecedented. Grisha feigned amnesia, expressing amazement at the civilization within the walls and admiration for the soldiers who fought Titans. He claimed to remember only his name and his occupation as a doctor. Keith was fascinated by this mysterious stranger, who asked endless questions about life inside the walls, while offering no information about where he had come from. Keith brought Grisha to Shiganshina, where he was temporarily imprisoned for illegally entering Titan territory. Upon release, Grisha asked Keith to teach him about the world he had forgotten. They spent time in a pub where Grisha listened to Keith's complaints about the stagnant state of society and his hopes that the Survey Corps could expand humanity's territory. Grisha praised these ambitions, calling Keith and his fellow soldiers special people. His comments caught the attention of Carla, a barmaid who chastised Keith for trying to recruit more people into the Corps' dangerous work. Grisha assured her he had no intention of joining, that such work required people of exceptional character. The conversation was the first of many. Grisha established himself as a doctor in Shiganshina, using the medical knowledge he had gained in Marley's more advanced society. When an epidemic broke out in the district, he successfully treated hundreds of patients, including Carla and her parents. His techniques were more sophisticated than anything the Wall's doctors had seen, earning him immense respect throughout the community. Carla was grateful for his intervention. They met again after the epidemic, and over time, their relationship deepened into something more than friendship. Grisha had followed Kruger's advice, building a life within the walls, finding someone to love. Carla represented everything Marley had stolen from him. The possibility of normalcy, of family uncomplicated by revolution, of purpose beyond revenge. They married and Keith attended the ceremony, leaving early to avoid confronting his own feelings. Grisha tried to thank him for the introduction, but Keith had already gone. In 835, Carla gave birth to a son. They named him Eren, the same name as the man who had saved Grisha on the wall. The boy was healthy, loud, full of energy and curiosity. Grisha held him and saw a second chance, an opportunity to be the father he had failed to be for Zeke. He documented everything in journals hidden in the basement of their home. The truth about the outside world, the history of Eldia and Marley, the nature of the Titans, his own story. On the back of the photograph Kruger had given him, showing Dina and Zeke, he wrote a message: "Humanity has not perished." He locked these materials away, keeping the key with him always, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. Years passed in relative peace. Grisha maintained his medical practice, treating patients throughout Shiganshina and occasionally traveling to other districts. He used these journeys to gather intelligence about the government and search for information about the Reiss family. His position as a respected doctor gave him access to officials and nobles, allowing him to slowly piece together the truth that the public monarchy was a facade, that a family named Reiss held the true power, that they possessed the founding titan and ruled from the shadows. He gathered enough evidence to locate them, to understand their movements and vulnerabilities. But he did not act. The mission Kruger had given him remained incomplete. The attack titan ready to be used but held dormant. Grisha delayed because of the life he had built. Eren was growing, curious and headstrong, asking questions about the world beyond the walls. Mikasa Ackerman, a girl Eren had rescued from human traffickers, had been adopted into their family in 844, making them a family of 4. Carla worried about Eren's desire to join the Survey Corps, seeing the same reckless determination that had drawn her to Grisha in the first place. Grisha supported his son's spirit while secretly understanding that his delay was selfish. Every year he waited was a year closer to the end of his 13-year limit as a Titan shifter. If he died without completing the mission, everything Kruger had sacrificed would be meaningless. But the thought of destroying another family, of taking the founding titan by force and passing his burden to Eren, felt like repeating the same mistakes he had made with Zeke. The decision was taken from him on a morning in 845, when Titans breached Wall Maria. Berthold Hoover, transformed into the colossal titan, destroyed the gate of Shiganshina District. Reiner Braun, as the armored titan, destroyed the inner gate of Wall Maria itself. Pure titans flooded into the district, devouring anyone who could not escape. Eren came home to find their house destroyed, Carla trapped beneath rubble. Grisha was away on a medical call. By the time he returned, chaos had consumed the district. He found Keith Shady's organizing evacuations and enlisted his help in searching for his family among the refugees flooding toward Trost District. When they located Eren and Mikasa, Grisha learned that Carla was dead, devoured by a titan. The news broke something fundamental in him. He had lost Faye to Marleyan violence, Zeke to his own failures, Dina to political persecution, and now Carla to the very enemy he had been sent to destroy. The delay that had allowed him to experience years of happiness with his second family had cost Carla her life. If he had acted sooner, taken the founding titan and passed it to someone who could use it, perhaps the walls would have been better defended. Perhaps Marley would have been less bold in sending warriors to attack. Grisha's restraint, born from love and caution, now seemed like fatal weakness. The time for hesitation ended. That night, he took Eren into the forest and told him about the key to their basement, about secrets that would explain everything. Then he injected Eren with Titan serum. But first, Grisha traveled to the Reiss family's chapel in the underground caverns beneath Wall Shina. The timing was not coincidental. The attack titan's ability to see future memories had shown him what needed to happen, though he did not fully understand until the moment arrived. In the chapel, the Reiss family had gathered. Rod Reiss, the true king of the walls, his wife, his 5 legitimate children, and Frida Reiss, the 15-year-old girl who possessed the founding titan. Grisha burst in and revealed himself as an Eldian from beyond the walls. He begged Frida to use the founding titan's power to save the people of Shiganshina from the titans that were invading. She refused. The vow renouncing war prevented her from using the founding titan for violence, even to protect her own people. King Fritz's will, inherited through the founding titan's memories, compelled her toward pacifism and eventual acceptance of humanity's extinction. Grisha transformed into the attack titan and fought her. Despite the founding titan's immense power, Frida was inexperienced and bound by the vow. Grisha overpowered her and consumed her, gaining the founding titan. Then, in a fury, he slaughtered the rest of the Reiss family, except for Rod, who escaped into a hidden passage. Grisha emerged from the chapel covered in blood and horror at his own actions. He had murdered children. He had stolen the power that represented hope for his people. He could see fragments of future memory, showing him that this moment was necessary, that his son Eren would use these powers in ways Grisha could not comprehend. But the knowledge offered no comfort. He had become exactly what Marley accused Eldians of being, a monster who devoured the innocent to gain power. Grisha found Keith and Eren at Trost, where refugees from Shiganshina had gathered. Keith tried to stop him from taking Eren into the forest, arguing that the boy should not bear such a burden. Grisha replied that Eren was his son, which made him qualified for what needed to happen. In the forest, away from witnesses, Grisha injected Eren with Titan serum and allowed his son to consume him. The attack Titan and founding Titan both passed to the boy who would inherit Grisha's mission without understanding its full scope. In his final moments, Grisha experienced a phenomenon unique to the attack Titan. He could see not only past memories but also future ones, transmitted back through time from Eren years later. He saw glimpses of what his son would do with the powers he had just inherited. He saw the rumbling, the billions of colossal titans marching from Paradise to flatten the world. He saw his parents in Liberio, trapped in a prison cell as the wall titans approached. He saw Zeke, grown into a man with the beast titan's power, fighting against Eren's plan. Grisha cried out at these visions, demanding to know if this was truly what Eren wanted, why his son had not shown him everything, whether there was truly no other way. But the transformation was already complete. Eren consumed his father and inherited both titans, with his memories of the act suppressed until they would be needed years later. The man who saw the truth did not live to witness its consequences. Grisha Yeager died at age 39, having outlived his sister by 22 years, having abandoned his first son at age 7, having spent 13 years carrying the attack Titan from the walls of Paradise to the chapel of the Reiss family. He left behind 3 journals, a photograph, and a key. These materials would eventually reach the basement he had kept locked, providing answers to mysteries that had plagued the Survey Corps for generations. They would reveal that humanity lived beyond the walls, that Titans were transformed Eldians, that the world was larger and crueler than anyone inside the walls had imagined. His story would become history, his choices scrutinized by those who inherited the consequences. Some would see him as a hero who fought against oppression. Others would see him as a terrorist whose radicalism destroyed everything he touched. The truth was more complicated than either assessment. Grisha Yeager was a man shaped by trauma, driven by rage, motivated by love, and ultimately used by forces beyond his comprehension. He made catastrophic mistakes with Zeke, trying to mold his son into a weapon without considering the cost to the child. He showed greater wisdom with Eren, allowing his second son a childhood before revealing darker truths. But this wisdom came too late to prevent tragedy. He possessed medical knowledge that saved hundreds of lives and revolutionary fervor that contributed to countless deaths. He was victim and perpetrator, father and destroyer, savior and monster. The impact of Grisha's actions rippled forward through time. Eren inherited not only Titan powers but also the burden of his father's incomplete mission. The journals in the basement provided crucial intelligence that transformed the Survey Corps' understanding of their world. The photograph of Dina and Zeke, carried by Grisha through his years inside the walls, would eventually facilitate the meeting between Eren and his half-brother, leading to cooperation that would reshape the fate of both Eldian populations. The founding Titan he stole from the Reiss family would become the key to multiple future plans. Reiss's attempt to restore it to royal bloodline through Historia, Zeke's intention to use it for Eldian euthanasia, and Eren's eventual activation of the rumbling. The attack Titan's unique ability to transcend time meant that Grisha's actions were simultaneously products of his own choices and influenced by future memories transmitted backward by Eren. This temporal paradox complicated any straightforward assessment of responsibility. Had Grisha chosen to attack the Reiss family, Or had Eren's future manipulation compelled him? The answer appeared to be both. Grisha made the choice, but he made it while experiencing visions of future necessity that he did not fully understand. In the broader context of Attack on Titan's themes, Grisha exemplified the cycle of violence that the series repeatedly examined. Oppression in his childhood created hatred that drove revolutionary action, that failed and created more suffering for the next generation. Zeke's betrayal stemmed from Grisha's treatment of him, which stemmed from his father's treatment of him, which stemmed from Marleyan oppression, which stemmed from historical Eldian oppression. Each generation attempted to break the cycle through violence, only to perpetuate it in new forms. Grisha recognized this in his final moments, begging Zeke to stop Eren and save humanity from the consequences of choices made long before. Despite his final plea, the future he feared unfolded exactly as he had foreseen. The world burned under the footsteps of the rumbling, the inevitable consequence of choices made generations before. But long before the world burned, there was another day when everything changed. The day humanity's peace shattered and the first wall fell. The fall of Wall Maria, humanity's first collapse. For the fans and scholars who study Attack on Titan's narrative construction, Grisha's role represents one of the series' most sophisticated examples of revelatory storytelling. His character was introduced as a simple plot device, the mysterious father who disappeared on the day of tragedy, leaving behind a locked basement that supposedly contained crucial secrets. As the story progressed, that simple framework expanded into a multi-generational epic spanning continents and ideologies. The basement reveal in Chapter 86 of the manga and Episode 57 of the anime marked a fundamental shift in the series' scope, transforming what had seemed to be a straightforward survival story into a complex exploration of history, oppression, and cycles of revenge. Grisha was the vehicle for this transformation, his journals providing both the information that explained the setting and the emotional grounding that made the information meaningful. The fandom has extensively debated Grisha's morality and choices. Some view him sympathetically as a product of systemic oppression, who did his best in impossible circumstances. Others condemn him for instrumentalizing Zeke and committing violence against children. These debates reflect the series' refusal to provide simple moral answers. Grisha was neither purely heroic nor purely villainous, but deeply human, making terrible mistakes alongside genuine attempts at redemption. His relationship with both sons highlighted different approaches to parenthood and their consequences. The first son raised as a tool who betrayed him. The second son raised with affection, who ultimately surpassed him in both vision and ruthlessness. The documentary significance of Grisha's story lies in its demonstration of how political extremism develops from personal trauma and societal oppression. He was not born a revolutionary. He was created by a system that murdered his sister and punished his people for the crimes of ancestors who lived centuries before. The Eldian Restorationists, while radical in their methods and ideology, emerged from legitimate grievances. But their response to oppression was to embrace an equally supremacist ideology in reverse, denying historical atrocities and planning violence that would have created new victims. Grisha's tragedy was that he could see the injustice of Marleyan oppression, but could not recognize how his own methods perpetuated cycles of violence. This blindness cost him everything: his sister, his son, his first wife, his comrades, his second wife, and ultimately his own life. Only in his final moments did he gain enough perspective to realize the full horror of what he had set in motion. The Attack Titan's gift of future sight became a curse, showing him that his son would complete the mission in ways that made Grisha's own violence seem restrained by comparison. He died knowing that the powers he passed on would be used to kill billions, including his own parents who still lived in Liberio, the internment zone where his story began. For viewers and readers experiencing this narrative, Grisha's arc functions as a warning about the seductive nature of righteous anger and the danger of allowing childhood trauma to dictate adult choices. It also functions as a tragedy about love, for Faye, whose death shaped everything that followed, for Dina, whose memory sustained him through his darkest moments, for Zeke, whose betrayal he eventually understood and forgave, for Carla, whose kindness offered him a second chance, and for Eren, whose future would be worse than anything Grisha had endured. Like and subscribe if this exploration of Grisha Yeager's complex journey resonated with you. And stay tuned as we continue examining the lives that shaped the world of Attack on Titan.